Take it back. Do, 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 do. Take it back. Yeah. Take it back.
YouTube recommends some weird stuff to me sometimes. And a lot of it I like, but every once in a while it recommends something so infuriating to me that it immediately sends me off on a tangent that my son has no choice but to sit and listen to as I bore the ever-loving shit out of him. Some of the content is just flabbergasting. Like YouTube, if you don't know me by now, you won't ever know me. And I came across this channel that used Rocky, one of my favorite fictional characters, in the thumbnail, and the title of the video was, "You Don't Need a Formula," stating that Rocky's inciting incident didn't happen until the 55th page, and therefore, Rocky was a structureless movie. Now, I'm not a guy of absolutes. Some people are able to sit and write just fine without using a formula. At least that's what people tell me. See, I've never seen it personally, but then again, I've never seen a fucking unicorn either, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Anyway, so this writer believes that Rocky's inciting incident doesn't happen until page 55, and because it is arguably one of the greatest pop culture films of all time, therefore, you don't need rules in writing. Now, I don't like calling out people, especially other YouTubers, because I don't like all that drama shit that infects this platform like a goddamn disease, but I do have a couple of problems with this idea. So let's call this a polite disagreement between two rabid fans. The first and most glaring is the fact that Rocky's inciting incident happens way the hell before the 55th page or the 55th minute of the film. In my opinion, a good writer never does anything by accident. They don't wing it when writing a screenplay or a novel. Nothing is done on accident, everything has a purpose. So it would reason to believe that if you're writing everything with a purpose, then you have some sort of plan. Remember this because I'll be coming back to it. Now let me break this down for you. This film follows, if anything, the hero's journey. But like most films, it also follows the basic structure of well-formed stories. That is, of exposition, first significant event, conflict, complication, crisis, climax, and resolve. And I'm here to prove that I'm the world's undefeated heavyweight analyst of the world, and I'll do so by showing that not only did Rocky follow a formula, but also that not every event in a story needs to be earth-shattering to qualify as significant, especially when we're talking about a drama, which Rocky clearly is. So let's dig in, shall we? What is exposition? Well, it's a scene that tells us of a moment that defines who that character is. I can think of one movie that did this so well that the scene has become iconic like a Ubisoft hat. This is the opening scene of Indiana Jones. We see Jones doing what he does, and therefore we know who he is. It is also told through heart-pounding action, which is usually how you want to open your adventure movie or action movie. So how does Rocky start? By showing Rocky fighting like a bum, getting called the bum, and eventually winning only because he got mad. Now why is this important? It's called foreshadowing. Rocky's anger will help him later in the movie. So who is Rocky? Well, he's a goddamn no-good rotten bum and he's wasting everybody's time, including his own. He walks the lonely streets of Philadelphia, stopping to tap on glass, making kissing noises at a dog. He smokes, he drinks alcohol with some hoods on the street, he doesn't care about his career, he's just trying to make a quick buck and survive like everybody else in town. Rocky is a nobody. He doesn't even have dreams of being somebody yet. But then again, maybe he does. See, when Rocky gets home, he's looking into the mirror and he realizes that the only people he has to talk to is himself, and he catches sight of the kid that he used to be. Something happens to him at that moment. That nervous energy is gone. He takes the picture into his hand and stares into the mirror, breathing heavily, looking intense for a long moment, perhaps thinking of the man he dreamed of being as a child. Nothing is done accidentally, everything has a purpose. Now, we've established that Rocky is a bum. This is incontrovertible. He's listless, shiftless, doesn't even have a real job. When he visits Adrian at work, he knows it. You think he doesn't know what people see him as? He loves Adrian. But what does he have to offer a girl like her? Oh, okay, wait a minute. I made a mistake. Rocky does have a job. It's kind of like a hobby, you know? He beats up people who owes a guy money. He's a debt collector, if you will. He threatens to break a man's thumb if he doesn't pay up, and predictably the man pays what he can. Rocky catches hell, though, for not breaking a guy's thumb, because underneath that tough guy facade, Rocky is a man with a heart of gold. He even gets shit on by the Loan Shark's driver. No one respects him. He is truly a nobody. So now that we know who Rocky is, what is the first significant event or inciting incident? It has to be something just absolutely mind-blowing, right? Something absolutely crazy and mind-blowing must happen at this point to totally turn this man's life around, right? Fireball from the heavens crashes in the earth, and Rock must gather his strength to fight the demons and angels that rise from the newly formed crater to hell. Nope. Mickey locks him out of his locker. Yep, that's it. That's the first significant event. See, it may not mean much to me and you, but that's not what's important here. See, it's what it means to Rocky that is important. Now, I find that people nowadays have a hard time empathizing with one another. You know, it must be all that time we spend staring into that dark mirror of our phones all day. This could be why most people think this isn't significant, but then again, it isn't about what is significant to us, the viewer, or even the writer. What is important is what is significant to Rocky. Watch how Rocky reacts to hearing that his locker has been cleaned out.
Hey, yo, Mike. Where's my lock? Whose stuff is this in my locker?
It ain't your locker no more.
You put my stuff on Skid Row. I've been in that locker for 6 years and you put my stuff in a bag on Skid Row?
You got heart, kid, but you fight like a goddamn ape. This is the inciting incident. By its very definition, this is the moment that spurs the lead into action. Rocky cannot allow this to continue. He hates that everyone, including those he respects, see him as a bum. Mick tells him to retire, and that's it. I mean, that's really it. The first significant event in just about every story is short. It is the thing that gives rise to the passion that sets forth a change in our character. Just like in the hero's journey, the lead character almost always denies the call to action at first. Now, I know this section of a story is called by many names, but in my world it's the first significant event. We know it's significant because Rocky thinks it is, even if he doesn't show it at first. Conflict is the second largest part of the story next to complication and is usually foreshadowed in the exposition and first significant event stages, but it doesn't solidify itself for the character until the pain of not doing something about it becomes too much to bear. In order to have meaningful conflict, the lead character must have a weakness, and Rocky's weakness is his self-esteem. Rocky goes to Adrienne right after, looking for comfort. He says it doesn't bother him that they took his locker away after 6 years, but if it didn't bother him, why is he bringing it up? I know this may throw some people off, but just because a character says something is true, doesn't mean it is. He tries to get her to allow him to walk her home, but she won't. Rocky is so lonely at this point in his life that he will continually bother a girl that doesn't seem at all interested in him, simply because she isn't mean to him. This is the first conflict that Rocky must contend with. How does he get Adrienne to love him back? He goes to Paulie, her brother, for some advice. He complains that she's always giving him the cold shoulder. No matter how hard he tries, nothing. Paulie tells him to forget it. Now remember that nothing is on accident, everything has a purpose. When Rocky says to him,
I need a Cadillac to connect with your sister, something wrong with my face, you know what I mean?
he's not saying she's stuck up. He's asking Paulie if he thinks he's a bum too, just like everyone else. Paulie blames her. Paulie calls her crazy and a loser, says that both her and Rocky are going to die alone if they're not careful. He invites Rocky over to Thanksgiving dinner, and Rocky accepts the invite because he knows Adrienne is going to be there. Our hero is constantly trying to fix his most important conflict, or the conflict that he believes is most important at the moment, because everything else seems hopeless. At the bar, Rocky sees Apollo Creed on television telling his next opponent to get out of sports, to stay in school, and the bartender calls the heavyweight champion of the world a clown. Rocky defends Creed, asks the bartender what risks he's ever taken. What did he ever achieve? And in response, the bartender cuts Rocky deep. He says,
Hey, Rocky, you're not happy with your life. It's nice.
remember, nothing is on accident. Everything has a purpose. And then when a little girl from the neighborhood calls Rocky a creepo, he says,
Yeah, who are you to give advice, creepo?
he calls himself a creepo. He's starting to drink the Kool-Aid at this point. Rocky wants to walk Adrienne home because, as he says, there's a lot of creeps out there. You could spot a creep. She refuses him. And then a kid from the street he knows disrespects him and calls him a creep. Rocky starts to believe he is a creep because the evidence from the outside world points him to that conclusion. This introduces us to the next conflict, Rocky's lack of self-respect and confidence. The lead character isn't the only person in the story to have conflict as well. Sometimes so does the antagonist. And whatever the antagonist wants, the protagonist wants as well. In this case, both fighters want respect. Apollo Creed has himself a problem. His next fight is getting cancelled because the fighter broke his jabbing hand, and every other fighter worth a damn is either too fat or too scared to fight him. He's trained, paid out money to various organizations, and if the fight doesn't go through, Apollo stands to lose a lot of money. Whatever will he do? Creed comes up with an idea. Give a local underdog fighter an opportunity. It's a novelty fight that will draw in the crowds and salvage this shit show that is this fight. They find Rocky in the name Italian Stallion, and being the great businessman and fighter that he is, decides that fighting someone like Rocky would be the gimmick that they need, and at this point in Rocky's life, he might just be desperate enough to take that fight. Rocky is nervous. See, tonight is the big night, the night that Paulie set him up with his sister. See, Rocky keeps asking if Paulie told Adrian that he's coming. He keeps asking over and over again, and why? Because deep inside, Rocky can't imagine a world where she would have accepted a date with him. He's sure that Paulie never told her, and sure enough, when he arrives at the house, he finds out he was right. She tries to get out of the date. She tells Paulie that she isn't ready. Paulie's a real piece of shit in this movie. He treats Adrian like she isn't wanted, like a loser, even calls her one. Rocky hears it all, and he wants to call off the date at this point, because everything's ruined now. Now that Paulie's gone and thrown a turkey into the alleyway and Adrian is crying in her room, there doesn't seem to be much of a point in doing anything. This is the point of conflict. You chase a man up a tree, you throw rocks at him, then you send a bear up the tree after him. In Rocky's case, you make him lose the only thing he's good at, you have people make him feel like a loser, you make him fall for a shy girl that he thinks is ignoring him because now he believes he's a bum. Then, when he finally gets her alone, you have Paulie completely ass up the whole moment by destroying the Thanksgiving dinner. Rocky is a shy guy. He probably realizes that Adrian is out of his league or just not interested, and as a result of his low self-esteem, doesn't want to pressure her into going out with him, but Paulie pressures him to do it anyway. He tries and almost gives up again until the efforts are rewarded. Rocky has heart, but he's forgotten that it's his only strength. This event closes up one of the conflicts and puts us on course for complication. See, in order for crisis to happen, something must be at risk. If you go the entire story without the character having something to risk, like, let's say, a passion that is on the wane, then we don't feel any tension. At the skating rink, Rocky tells Adrian that boxing used to be the best thing in his life, but no more. Possibly because he's realizing that he's getting nowhere with it.
But I'm a southpaw, and nobody wants to fight no southpaw, It's a rack where you almost guaranteed to end up a bum.
I don't think you're a bum.
Well, I'm at least half a bum,
He blames his career on not being given a chance because he's a southpaw. Rocky is so lonely that he spills his guts to Adrian, and it seems to endear him to her. But she doesn't understand why he wants to be a fighter, and because she doesn't understand it, we're sowing the seeds of a future crisis. I mean, after all, they do end up having sex. Awkward, weird sex. Now, the next scene is important, but there is something we need to talk about that we really haven't touched on. Now, see, Rocky is alone, yes, but where are his parents? He doesn't talk about them. And living the way he does, getting involved with loan sharks, we can only assume that his parents died when he was young. I say this because the relationship between Mick and Rocky is tenuous, yes, but Mick's words seem to hurt Rocky more than anyone else's. Why? Because Rocky looks to Mick like a child does a father. He looks up to him for guidance. But mostly it's because he's about to lose the only thing that gives his life meaning. The only thing before Adrian that kept him alive in that shithole of an apartment. Boxing. Mickey says that Rocky has talent, but he became a leg breaker for some hood. Mick saw potential in Rocky. Saw it way back then. But Rocky squandered it.
I said that before, you dumb dago!
I've been coming in for 6 years, and 6 years you've been sticking it to me. I want to know how come.
Because you had the talent to become a good fighter. And instead of that, you became a leg breaker. Some cheap, second-rate loan shark.
It's a living?
It's a waste of life.
Mick says in return. Rocky stands in realization that Mick is right. The whole movie has been leading up to this point. See, the point of conflict, not the first significant event, is to push the character to their absolute limit so that they finally take action. And this is where complication comes in. In a blockbuster film, this is usually where the hero fails in some way and must regroup. In Indiana Jones, it is the moment that they recover the staff and find the Ark, only to have it stolen by the Nazis. In Rocky, it is the moment after Rocky is asked to fight Apollo Creed. See, Rocky's conflict is with himself because this is a drama. Most dramas deal with the inner lives of characters. Rarely does the conflict come from the outside of the character. Apollo Creed is not his enemy. He's just the guy giving Rocky an opportunity. If anything, he's doing Rocky a solid. No, Rocky's real enemy is himself. When the promoter offers Rocky the chance to fight Apollo Creed for the championship, Rocky refuses at first because remember that Rocky has just come to grips with the fact that he is a bum and is ready to give up the fighting life. The promoter actually has to convince Rocky to take the biggest opportunity that has ever fallen into his lap. Why does he refuse? Well, let's let Rocky tell us.
Well, it's just that you see, I fight in clubs, you know, and I'm really a ham and egg. This guy, he's the best, and it wouldn't be such a good fight.
Again, Rocky's worst enemy is himself. He doesn't believe in himself, and because no one else believes in him, he just can't do it. Being this ever-savvy promoter, he tells Rocky that this is the land of opportunity. And out of all the fighters out there, Apollo picked you. He makes Rocky feel special for the first time, and the result is that Rocky takes the fight. You see, this can't be the first significant event or inciting incident, because if it is, that means that the only conflict in the film is the fight, and that would be okay if this was a Michael Jai White film, where the whole movie is just a series of fights, but this is a drama. If this was the inciting incident, then everything that came before it has to be exposition, and if that were the case, that famous training montage where Rocky finally runs up to the top of those stairs, you know, and the scene that inspired a monument made of him, wouldn't be Rocky overcoming his final complication. That would just be, what, conflict? It wouldn't mean anything to us, because climbing down those stairs wouldn't be Rocky overcoming his limitations and finally believing in himself. It would just be some guy doing a thing. No, that scene is iconic because it taps into something we all wish we could do. Overcome our fear and overcome our physical limitations. Remember always what I said about conflict arising from a character's weakness in my Glengarry Glen Ross video. Rocky's weakness is his lack of faith in himself. All conflict and complication arise from this weakness. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, let's talk about the complication that arises from Rocky accepting the fight. First, Paulie loses his goddamn mind. When he finds out that Rocky's getting $150 grand for the fight, he immediately starts asking for a job. Rocky politely declines, and, well, Paulie doesn't take it well. But then again, Paulie never takes it too well. Then, as he's watching television, Apollo Creed taunts Rocky a bit, not at all taking him seriously. Rocky, forever in a state of denial, denies that the words affect him, but later confides in Adrian that it does bother him. Then Mick comes knocking on his door with his hat literally in his hands, attempting to manipulate Rocky into forgiving him without Mick ever once asking for forgiveness. Everyone wants a piece of Rocky now that he's becoming somebody, and Rocky lashes out in a way that is believable to his character. He stays calm and reserved to Mick's face. But once he's gone, he says what's really on his mind. He screams and punches the door, letting all of that pent-up resentment flow out of him. And Mick listens from the staircase, realizing the mistake he's made. All of these complications come from Rocky's weakness. They arise from the inability to believe in himself. He takes a chance on Mick and chases him down in the street, agreeing to let him train him. Rocky is going to face his weakness and try to destroy it. He trains hard, and the stresses of the day make him take his frustrations out on Adrian. Paulie goes behind his back and invites the media to watch Rocky work out, further complicating his already fragile state of being by bringing in the attention of all of Philadelphia. All because Paulie wants a piece of the action. Then Paulie catches Rocky and Adrian talking about him behind his back and takes a bat to everything in the house, further complicating Rocky's life because now he has to sleep on his own couch because his girlfriend is now sleeping at his house now. And as Mick said, women weaken legs. Before we can reach the climax of the story, We must close all complicated threads. In the end of the complication phase, Rocky has his woman with him always. He has a trainer who is helping him get back into top form, and Paulie gets to land an advertising deal. Everybody gets something out of the deal.
We got a winner here. We got a chance.
We approach the climax once Rocky reaches the top of those stairs and gains back his self-confidence. Now, some movies don't have a crisis. That is why the payoff at the end doesn't feel earned, because if the character doesn't have a moment where everything seems hopeless, the tension in the final moments of climax just don't feel right. They feel unearned. Rocky is structure perfection for drama. People often say that dramas are structureless, and I could not disagree more. When Rocky goes to the ring and sees that his poster in the auditorium is wrong and that even the promoter doesn't seem to care, he realizes then that, at least in his diminished capacity, that he isn't in even the same universe of skill as Apollo. He even says it to Adrian that night in his apartment. He says,
I mean, who am I kidding? I ain't even in the guys' league.
all Rocky cares about is surviving a full 16 rounds, that's it. If he could do that, he's done more than any other fighter that's fought Creed, and to Rocky, that'll be enough. Once again, Rocky doesn't believe in himself. But when Rocky knocks Apollo Creed down, the first time anyone has ever done it, Rocky is elated. He's running around the ring, waiting for his opportunity to get back to work on Creed. The problem is now, though, that he's awoken that sleeping giant, see. Crisis kicks in when Apollo takes Rocky to task, hammering, trying to kill him as if he were a real threat. When Rocky is knocked down and everybody tells him to stay down, we finally come to the climax of the film. I watched my son as he watched this scene unfold, and I can hear him whispering, "Come on, Rock, get up." You know, his leg was shaking, his eyes fixated on the television, waiting for the outcome. When Rocky got up, I could feel my son start to breathe again. He felt relieved. This is the effect of climax, you know, a moment where everything can end, where the dreams of the hero can either be realized or shattered. The final moments of the climax comes when Rocky breaks Apollo's ribs and it looks like Rocky might actually win this fight. See, that is the payoff for all the scenes that came before it. Because this man, Rocky, who no one believed in, who didn't even believe in himself, not only knocked Apollo Creed down, but took all of the champ's best shots, and not only survived to the final round, but nearly won the fight. Climax is the shortest phase, usually, because it comes right at the tail end of Crisis, and is immediately followed by the resolution of the story. When the bell rings and the two fighters hug each other, both agreeing that neither one wants a rematch, we know that Rocky did more to prove that he's not a bum. He proved that he could have been the champion if he just had one more round of fight left. When he calls out Adrian's name and she overcomes her shyness and comes running into that ring in front of all those people on camera beneath the big lights and kisses Rocky, everyone gets their closure. Then and only then can the movie end. So what have we learned? Well, by now I hope you realize that structure cannot be avoided, but the structure can be made to seem less obvious, see? Dramas are different almost entirely from a tone aspect than, say, a high-stakes action movie. In most action movies, the next step is very obvious. The characters' motivations are obvious as well. The action movie is very single-minded when it comes to plot, usually. The hero stands triumphant over evil, or in some rare cases, evil stands triumphant over the even more evil. All good movies, however, follow structure, whether intended or not. So my point is, if you are a writer and you find yourself struggling to make a compelling story or even complete a story because you got to a point where you just don't know where to go, you probably need a formula. And sometimes you need to create your own. In my next On Writing video, I will show you the inner workings of the system that I use to write my books and short stories. So if you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, comment below, share your stories with us, share your thoughts with us, and until next time, peace.